like a question, just gaining consciousness. Yeah, because it honestly felt, and that's the best way to explain it, is I felt like I was possessed. I felt like I was doing these things that had no control over it and couldn't stop it. Like you're watching a scary movie and you're like, don't go into the basement, but she's gonna go in the basement. And it was just this train wreck that I couldn't stop the train. And for me, when I had this moment of clarity, which sounds like you did too, this waking up, it almost felt like I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I was just coming to after a long nightmare or a long blackout, to keep with the metaphor. And I didn't want to stop drinking, so I don't know that I would have had the wherewithal or the foresight that you did of like, how has this affected my life and how have I been doing this for so long without realizing it, to me, because I know a lot of people in sobriety and recovery, and people sometimes start their journey when they're 80. So when you say 35, I think most people consider that very young. I certainly do, but it does kind of start it does start this domino effect for me of like, what other things don't I know about life and about myself? And then you just kind of want to keep peeling back those layers because you don't want to you see how much harm you've done.
What if just one drink was really a lie you tell yourself to survive? In this conversation with Lindsey Van Wagner, author of Spirit Vigilante, we strip away the stories and get into the mechanics of how people actually change. Here's what we cover in today's episode. The lost years, why Lindsey reframed a decade of chaos as sickness, not badness, and how that shift unlocked grace and momentum. The forever question, a practical way to stop obsessing about never again and win today instead. Lies as a second job, the cognitive load of hiding and the freedom you get back when you stop managing alibis. Bipolar II in early alcohol-free life. What gets harder? When the numbing stops and the specific support that made it sustainable. Self-exploration and denial. Tiny, repeatable experiments to turn curiosity into change. Willingness and surrender. How to put your ego down without putting yourself down. The inside out versus the outside in living. Taking your power back from partners, parties, promotions, and the next arrivals. And much, much more. And you can learn more about this beautiful woman by grabbing her book, Spirit Vigilante, and following her on Instagram at Spirit Vigilante. Okay, so without further ado, I'll shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of the beautiful, the incredible, the amazing Lindsey Van Wagner. So everything's groovy, you're doing okay. Congratulations on writing such a great book. I reached out to you, didn't I, a couple of days ago and said, I get so many books sent to me it's nothing like kudos to people for writing their own book, but sometimes I kind of fall asleep when I'm reading them, and yours kept me up. I really enjoyed it. Spiritual Vigilante. What gave you the idea to write a book?
Thank you so much for saying that. That's such a high compliment, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it and it landed with you. Wow. Yeah, I have just had quite the journey, and I believe that as I've been following you and tuning in, that we're here to share our stories and help it. I couldn't make sense of the things I went through unless I was meant to do something with it. And so for me, that looked like writing a book. It was a time in my life where several pillars fell around the same time, and there was really nothing left to do but write. And I committed to it, and I took it seriously, and I took a bunch of classes, and anyone can do it. Truly. I encourage, the writing process can be so healing and then also so empowering. And those are the least of the benefits. The benefit is exactly what you just said, somebody getting something out of it.
Yeah. Somebody getting something out of it and then reaching out and being like, I got something out of it. It helps, doesn't it? You get that feedback.
Such a gift. Such a gift.
You talked in your book about the lost years. Just talk about that a little bit for the people listening. What are the lost years?
Sure. So what I call the lost years are before I got sober, about 10 to 15 years of my life, I mean, I say lost years because that was kind of when there were more outside consequences to what I was doing. I think I've been lost since I came out of the womb. I was always a very anxious child, was just so serious about everything. Like, couldn't even enjoy my childhood because I was just always stressed. I couldn't wait to be an adult. I was fascinated by learning, and it just put a lot of pressure. I'm the oldest child, and there's a lot to do with birth order around that. But yeah, what that looked like, pretty much things got bad when I did all the partying through high school and college. I started drinking when I was 14, but I was such a perfectionist that I could kind of keep the guardrails on because I had to get straight A's, of course. So I can only party so much. And then once I graduated from college and entered the workforce and life and me having to make my own decisions, it was kind of just no man's land. I got a job, but it wasn't enough to really challenge me or keep me on the straight and narrow. So that's when my partying uh, really took off. That's when, I was drinking. It's the story. We start drinking more and more, and then we start needing it, and then we can't. At least me, I'll speak for myself. And then I couldn't control it, and I didn't know what was happening to me. So the lost years kind of, for me, embody. And I joke now. I'm like, oh, that happened during my lost years. I don't remember that quite well. And the reason I use the word lost is because I see myself as being lost and sick rather than bad. And I had this narrative in my head for so long where I was just a bad person and damaged beyond repair and this and that. And so lost years to me, I can acknowledge that time period in my life with a sense of grace rather than punishment. So it was just chaos, one thing after another. And the outside consequences weren't even as bad as what was happening to me internally and my soul, and just not wanting to be alive and dying from the inside out. So
I never used the word lost years, but as I was reading your book and I heard that phrase, it reminded me of the time when I kind of woke up and I asked the question for the first time in my life, why do I drink alcohol? And I was 35 and I had a big problem actually dealing with that. You know, like why am I only asking this question after 35 years? And then I realized that alcohol, this is just my journey. I realized cognitively, changed my belief system that alcohol didn't provide me with any value. And I was able to quit very quickly. And then I was so angry at myself and so disappointed with myself and had so much shame that I'd reached the age of 35 without knowing this. And what else was there that I didn't know? Did you have a struggle with dealing with the awakening of the presence of the lost years?
That's a really good question, just gaining consciousness. Yeah, because it honestly felt, and that's the best way to explain it, is I felt like I was possessed. I felt like I was doing these things that had no control over it and couldn't stop it. Like you're watching a scary movie and you're like, don't go into the basement, but she's going to go in the basement. And it was just this train wreck that I couldn't stop the train. And for me, when I had this moment of clarity, which sounds like you did too, this waking up, it almost felt like I saw my life flash before my eyes and I was just coming to after a long nightmare or a long blackout, to keep with the metaphor. And I didn't want to stop drinking. So I don't know that I would have had the wherewithal or the foresight that you did of like, how has this affected my life and how have I been doing this for so long without realizing it, to me, because I know a lot of people in sobriety and recovery, and people sometimes start their journey when they're 80. So when you say 35, I think most people consider that very young. I certainly do, but it does kind of it does start this domino effect for me of like, what other things don't I know about life and about myself? And then you just kind of want to keep peeling back those layers because you don't want to live. You see how much harm you've done.
Yeah, that's what happened to me was what else don't I know? And then rather than leaning into curiosity and getting excited that I don't know anything, I had that shame ball of why don't I know?
Mm-hmm.
But I quickly got through that, and then I was able to get into the excitement and the curiosity of holy cow, I get to redesign my life rather than living it by
Right.
default, which is really important to me. You said then that you didn't want to stop drinking, and there's a quote in your book where you said something like, "I will never ever stop drinking altogether," which is something you said to yourself. People struggle with that so much. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk about how you dealt with the forever question?
Oh gosh, it was how I had been getting by for so long, and it was how my whole social structure was built. I didn't know anyone didn't drink, just growing up, my parents drank as soon as we were old enough. My siblings and I drank, all my parents' friends drank, family drank. I just didn't even know it was an option not to. I really did not, in my memory, see a non-drinker. So to me, what is life without drinking? How would I even have fun? I mean, it sounded absolutely crazy. And especially by then, it was so much more than just entertainment for me. It was everything. It was how I coped with life. So I couldn't imagine. I would take these breaks to prove to myself that I was, if you're listening to this, I'm using air quotes, prove to myself that I didn't have a problem. So I would take 30 days off or so and then be like, oh my God, now I can start drinking again. One drink will feel amazing because I haven't had anything in 30 days. I'm just going to try to drink like a normal person. And it would just go completely back to binge drinking right away. I don't have an off switch. And so, yeah, I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol. And then I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol because it was destroying me. And that was a very scary in between place to be. I literally had that crossroads moment that felt like life or death.
What would you say to people who are struggling with the "I will never ever stop drinking altogether"
Mm.
question today?
I would say you don't even need to think about that right now. I would say I really, today I'm not drinking because that's making my life better. I don't know about tomorrow. I hope I don't. But, and I don't say that because I don't have faith in myself. I say that because everything is transient and it helps me to stay in the day with everything in my life. So I just don't want people to fear thinking about forever. And for me, I don't look forward to the possibility of drinking. I know that I cannot drink normally. I have no illusion of if I go X amount of years without drinking, then maybe I'll be able to drink once my life improves. Like that's not even a thought for me. And so I will tell people this. I when I started trying to not drink, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna miss out on so much of life. Like all of a sudden, I thought of every wedding, every Christmas, every occasion, and I'm just not going to be able to have fun. And now it's a complete 180 of like, wow, I missed so much while I was drinking. And now I get to participate in my life. What a blessing. And so just don't think about forever. Give your soul a chance. Give your future self a chance, even if you don't really understand it all right now. And just try for today. If something's not working in your life and you want to make a little change.
I like that. Like that. Just take your time. Take your time with it. Don't
Yeah.
don't eat the whole elephant in one sitting. Just have a little spoonful of it. Don't know why I chose an elephant then. Could have chosen a big huge cake. An elephant cake.
Right.
Don't eat
Right.
a big elephant cake all at once. Have a little
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
Um I was listening to. I've been walking. I'm in LA. Been at my
Yeah.
in-laws' house. I've been here for a couple of weeks, and I've just been walking around, listening to podcasts, just getting some sun on my UK pasty white skin. And I noticed that every celebrity that I'm listening to is being interviewed. They inevitably have a few minutes where they talk about their drug problem. It's like it's always
Mm,
there. And I was listening to Stephen Coogan talking to Louis Theroux, and Louis Theroux said to him, "What's one of the benefits of not drinking anymore. And he said something that you also talked about in the book. And he says, I don't have to lie anymore. And
Mm.
he talked about the freedom that existed now that he doesn't have to lie. And you said in your book you was having a hard time keeping up with the lies. Can you talk about that, please? Because there'll be people right now who are in the midst of that, and thinking probably there's no way out. What will it be like when I stop lying? How do I deal with those lies? How did it all unravel for you?
Absolutely. So this is the way I explain it. I grew up with a pretty good moral compass. I knew right from wrong. I have a guilty conscience, all of that. When I started drinking and behaving in a certain way, my values started shifting to accommodate the drinking. So when there's this cognitive dissonance, you either need to change the behavior, and drink less so that I'm not compromising my values, or change my values. And unfortunately, by default, what naturally happened was my values stooped down to the drinking behavior. And so with that came a lot of lying. It's so much like when you say freedom, that's such a good word to explain the opposite of lying because it's so much to keep up with. I mean, it's like having a second job. Who did I say what to? What did I do last night? Who do I need to call and apologize to? I was cheating on partners, which I'm really not proud of. But like I said, I just felt possessed. I just did things that I would not and do not do when I'm living a sober lifestyle. And so that's where the lying came from, or lying about my drinking if a significant other said they thought I drank too much. And it's a really hard way to live. And there is so much freedom in today not having to lie about anything. Like that's just I used to have I would turn my location off. Like my whole family lives in the area and there's a million of us and we all track each other and just to kind of make sure we're okay. And now anyone can track me at any time and I have nothing to hide, you know? And that's just so beautiful. If you track me, I'm going to be like in a church at a recovery meeting, in a yoga studio, or in a coffee shop, Like I'm not going to be at someone's house that I shouldn't be at, in someone's basement smoking weed. I'm not going to be, just places I had no business being. And so that's just so freeing, so freeing. So yeah, the lying, it can feel like a crutch, but once you stop needing the lies to cope and to just exist in the world, then it opens up so much headspace for everything else when you're not constantly doing that damage control.
I don't have a memory of having so many lies, but I
Yeah.
definitely have a memory of holy shit, I don't think about drinking anymore. And I never really
Mm.
understood how much time and energy thinking about drinking took up. So I remember when I was first trying to help people, because obviously when I stopped drinking and I was writing about it and trying to be a public figure to help people,
Yeah.
people would write to me and say, well, how did you do it? So I remember putting my first workshop together and I defined it as white space. It's like I have all this white
Mm.
space. I have this white space out externally. So I have all this time that I can now fill in that it used to be filled with trips to the pub or blackouts or whatever. But I also have this internal white space where now I'm not thinking about certain things. So, oh, now I have too much to think about. But I never worried about that. Like it's almost like you stop drinking, all of a sudden there's a calm, and
Mhm.
it's not until you experience these things that you can feel the true value, right? And this is why sometimes I feel a bit sad actually when people do the 30-day thing, like a dry January is a
Mhm.
good example. People do the 30-day thing and then they can't wait to get smashed on like day
Yeah,
31. And I'm like, really? Didn't you just you ask someone like, tell me everything that you got out of it, and they tell you the story about how amazing it was, how
I
brilliant it was,
know.
and then they say, yeah, but I'm gonna get smashed, you know? It's like,
I
so there is a
know.
freedom there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I understand those people because I was one of them. And I yeah, I guess it just depends on how you uh weigh your benefits and costs and what those look like, where you are on your journey and what your priorities are.
I do like the fact that more and more people are taking breaks. In my sphere of influence, I got to be really careful and say that the world is changing because my world is very small. But the people I interact with, the way that they perceive alcohol is changing for sure. I could definitely feel that.
Definitely, definitely. I'm seeing that in younger demographics and not even a sobriety recovery thing, but just wanting to be healthier and drinking less. And I think that's amazing to see. And like you said, even if people are only getting the 30 days and doing dry January, just that they're willing to try it and can at least get a taste of that freedom is great. That definitely wasn't as popular, and it wouldn't have been popular to me years ago. So
Yeah, same here. You said in the book, I got to quote this, that you were struggling to balance bipolar disorder with your newfound sobriety. Consciousness
mhm.
seemed intolerable. For people listening here that have bipolar disorder, and the people who don't, but they know people who do, how did that make a difference in terms of what was going on for you when you was really in the deep end of things?
When I was in the deep end of drinking or like exploring the sobriety and having to really come to terms with
This the latter.
the latter. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So when I was drinking, I knew that I had these diagnoses and I would take medications, but then like stop seeing the psychiatrist. I'm sure you read in my book, I had a psychiatrist fire me and stop seeing me as a patient, which he totally should have done from a liability standpoint. And I just, even if I was taking the medications, when you're drinking, it was just messing me up more. So I didn't really think about the bipolar thing. And it's a very popular term, self-medicating. I think we all do that to an extent. It's more like a spectrum, whether it's food, caffeine, whatever. So I definitely was doing that with the drinking and smoking and anything someone put in front of me that would make me not feel like myself. And so then when all of that quote unquote medicine went away, I had to really take an honest look at who I am without that. And that's when those other issues started becoming more prevalent and noticeable. And I just had those really deep bouts of depression, hypomania. I have bipolar II disorder, so it's more symptomatic of depression, like longer periods of depression, and then hypomanic stages. So not like these 6 month, you know, gambling streaks or anything like that. And the hypomania isn't as common, but those like lows of depression. And I was met with that in sobriety because I had been doing nothing to treat it. And now I didn't have alcohol to kind of distract me from that just those depths of despair that I was in. And so that was difficult to navigate. And I was hospitalized in sobriety and had to address those, which I'm kind of glad it happened that way now because I just, a little over a year sober, I had to face that and get that under control before I could move forward. So for me, getting sober was like the launching pad for everything else. It just gave me the opportunity to walk through a door and discover all of these other things that I needed to address. But it was rough. It was mental illness is it's a challenge as we all know.
Yeah, I can imagine suddenly experiencing yourself. Because you wrote, silently acknowledged to yourself that you wasn't drinking because you wanted to. You was drinking because you needed to, and that was
Mhm.
terrifying. So I can imagine how when all of a sudden we start to feel who we are and all the
Yeah.
feelings that come back,
Yeah.
I can see how easy it is for someone to quickly go back and have a drink to get rid of that. So, what was your next light bulb, I guess, or your next strategy or moment where you suddenly had like maybe a new tool or something, or did you just grit it and bear it and go through it and experience it? What happened? Because it is so easy to go back and drink, and you didn't, and that's really interesting.
It is interesting because that's definitely the what we see in the moment as easier in that um, you're getting that instant gratification and that instant salve or band-aid to not feel that emotion in that moment. And I am in recovery programs. I have a lot of social support. I hear a lot from people who've relapsed, people who haven't, and I started taking suggestions. For me, it's not only going to meetings. I've started doing yoga very early in sobriety. I got back to writing and reading. Like those were things I couldn't do when I was drinking. I had lost all philosophical or spiritual interests, and just really kind of getting to know myself more. And so that I really what stopped me in those moments is not something I can really explain or put into words. I think it's grace. I think it's faith. I think, and that's where there's just some things that are happening outside of our awareness.
I mean, one thing that came up for me when you was talking then is the theme of self-exploration. And I know
Mhm.
you mentioned it in the book as self-exploration being the antidote to denial.
Mhm.
Just explain to people your experience with self-exploration because most people don't want to go there. I love it. Like, I think it's great. And I'm always saying to people, like, this can be fun. This can be something
Mhm.
really exciting. It doesn't have to be really difficult and challenging. So, yeah, talk about self exploration a little bit.
Yeah, so I think I've always been interested in it and I've always kind of thought on that level. But once I was living in a way that wasn't aligning, then I had to just drink more and forget all self-exploration because that was just too hard to face because I do think I have a strong connection with my soul or inner light or whatever you want to call it. And so I couldn't even face those like whispers and guidance. So I just drank and smoked. And so then when I started to reconnect with that, first of all, for me, denial and lying and secrecy and sketchiness don't can't coincide with recovery for me. Like it just doesn't live there, or else I'm not recovering. So I started making decisions based off of that. And what's going to support my recovery today? What's the next step that I can take? And a lot of that was and I don't think I really don't know that we're all you and I love talking about this and we love self-exploration and we like going deeper. Not everyone feels the need to do that. And that's fine. I don't know that I'm interested in it because I need to do it. Some people, if I weren't brought down to my knees and really had to get to know myself at my level and then at this level and then learn to enjoy it, I don't know that I would necessarily have woke up one day and been like, things are great, but I just think I'm going to do some self exploration today, So for me, it's a gift. It's a gift that I got to that point where I was willing to try anything. And now the relationship I have with myself, which I wouldn't have even known what that meant before, is amazing, and I can really like myself today. And that's crazy for me.
Yeah, you said in the book that you wasn't a fan of yourself. And in my coaching, when I'm trying to help people, irrespective of if they're alcohol reliant or not, I get lots of clients who they drink fine, they don't have a problem with it, but they have problems in other areas. It always comes
Right.
back to the voices of like, I don't like myself. How did
Mhm.
you turn that one
Mhm.
around? I mean, I'm assuming that today sometimes you don't like yourself as well. I mean, that's what happens to me. I like myself sometimes I don't, and I have little conversations with myself. But how do you go from that polar of like really I'm not a fan of myself to I'm the cheerleader here? Like what did you do there?
Of course. So I like to think of that as our inner critic, any of those self-doubt. It's a term I use in writing, and our inner critic's blocking us, but it can be used with everything. And it's trying to protect us. So it's not your fault that you're, diminishing your self-worth and doing all these things because you're trying to protect yourself and it's an evolutionary adaptation because we didn't want to say anything wrong or say anything weird and then be ostracized and then like we're gone if we're not part of a tribe. So I try to think of things in animalistic ways like that to give ourselves a little bit more permission. Like if we weren't hard on ourselves, we might not have survived certain situations. But with that said, it's not productive in this day and age. And so I really had to cognitive behavioral therapy, which I was just talking about yesterday on a podcast, which in a high level view is identifying the thoughts, kind of reasoning with them, seeing if there's actually any evidence or weight to them, which there usually isn't. There's a lot of distorted thinking that I talk in my book. And so changing those and trying to think of alternatives. And then also, and I talk about this too, like acting as if I am that person that loves myself. I think we kind of have to do it before we're ready to feel it, and mood follows action. So, and I still use that today. Like, what if I was a confident person leading this workshop or whatever I'm doing? What would that look like? And you almost live your way into becoming that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's like you're becoming an actor or an actress, right? It's like let's have a little fun here. Let's play around. Well, like it. I think one of the key things for me was I spent a lot of time in my head, still do. It's probably like my safe space. And so learning to drop down into my body, I really needed to learn to feel. So I would, if I want to be joyful because I'm sad, I would be like, okay, what does it feel? What does joy feel like? And so then for me to get to joy, I would have to think of a memory that brought me joy, or I'd have to think of something or do something that brings me joy. But then I'm not in my head, I'm in my body. I'm like, oh, this is joy, right? So it's like, so it's almost like what I'm hearing from you is like, it's a combination there of, yeah, confident. What does confidence feel like? Let's make that a reality. Let's tap into an experience or a memory or do something that we know provides us confidence, and then feel it, and then we can add the story on and accentuate it and visualize it. And yeah, I had to come back to the US. I had been out of the country for 8 months, so I was a little bit worried about being allowed back in because I have a green card. And I visualized like mad. Like I visualized that I was just super confident. I'm coming in. Everyone's going to be super nice. Everybody who was telling me like bad things, I was like, I don't want to hear it. Keep it out of my space. Don't send me these DMs about people, horror stories. I'm going to be fine, And I remember when I got off the plane, walking through the plane, everything I played out in my head came true.
Wow, that is so powerful.
I think it's really important. I think it's really important because you're activating that reticular activating system in your brain to say, give me more of what I believe. So like, I believe that I'm going to get stopped. Give me more evidence that shows, that I'm going to get stopped versus, no, give me more evidence that this is going to be easy.
Exactly.
This is going to be wonderful.
Yeah, almost a game. Like, what if it looked like this? What if I was the type of person who could write a book? Like, let me just explore that, and almost what can you get away with? And all of these are, and I talk about this too in my book, are like little experiments that I'm doing every day and just twisting the dial a little bit more, like, if I do that more and that less, okay. And we're always, whether you realize it or not, we're all doing that. We're testing the world, we're getting reactions, then we're basing our next move on those reactions we got, and positive conditioning and operant conditioning and all of this reinforcement and punishment. So being more intentional with that and what moves you're making can be really powerful, be them big or small. And then you start doing the small things and you're like, hold on, I can do that. And it stacks up. So it's these really subtle shifts that happen. Has that been your experience too?
Struggling with alcohol reliance? Need some help and support? Why don't you hop on a call with me? Because I've been alcohol free as fuck and living a self-led life now for 17 years. email me at thestridemethod@gmail.com or message me on WhatsApp +44 75 37 896 829, and I can organize with you to get on a call, have a one-to-one session, talk to me about what's going on for you, and I can give you some help and advice. All right, no labels, no shame, just clear next steps. If you're ready to live a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck, reach out. Okay, all right, enough of me, back to Lindsey Van Wagner. Well, one of the things that I do, I don't think this is everybody's cup of tea, but it's just the way that works for me, is I like to create frameworks and principles.
Mm.
So I get a little lost in the lostness of life, right?
Mm.
So I like frameworks that have polarity. So then I feel safe. I kind of know what's right, I know what's wrong, and that makes me feel safe enough then to play in the gray, right? But if I don't have the polarity, I feel a little bit unsafe, a little bit uncomfortable. So I create frameworks. Yeah. So a good example of a framework, we were just talking about acting, about being confident. Almost like a counter framework for me is, what if everything was my fault? So yesterday I had some words with my wife around money that upset us both. This morning I wake up, I get a voice message. She's still angry with me. I'm then triggered. I want to be right. Like, I want to defend, I want to judge, I want to point out hypocrisy and contradiction. But then I take a calm break. I get out of my head into my body and say, how could I have created this? Why have I created this beautiful woman, put her in my life, scripted her to say this thing, which is deliberately going to trigger me? What is there for me to learn? So I'm not a doormat. I'm not boundaryless. I'm playing. I know the rules and I'm playing around with it, but I'm saying, what would happen if I took 100% responsibility? And I know that triggers a lot of people, because I've had people in my community saying it's the most destructive framework ever. And I'm like, it's not about absolving or forgiving the person, the perpetrator, let's say. So in this case, I'm in the drama triangle and say my wife's a villain and I'm a victim, right? So it's not about absolving her of any blame. It's recognizing that, wow, okay, there are no bad parts. She's triggered for a particular reason to keep her safe. But what is my responsibility here? So if she punches me in the face, I said this on a podcast yesterday, if she punches me in the face and I punch her back, right? This is just the absurd example. I can then say, how can I take responsibility? And I can say to her, hey, yesterday when you punched me, I'm so sorry that I punched you back. And that helps me. It helps me to connect to people. It helps people to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel understood. I just got to make sure that the part of me that is like, yeah, but they've got to take their responsibility too. I got to just make sure I look after that part of me. But it works for me. I have so many of these little frameworks that just help me to get through really tough periods in my life,
Yeah, I am a proponent of that, because, and it doesn't, when you're explaining to me, it doesn't sound like you're shifting the blame to yourself or punishing yourself in any way. You're just taking your power back, actually, by saying, what's my accountability in this? Because now I have a choice. Now I have a choice to learn from it, rather than just being the victim and holding all this anger towards her, And so, yeah, I think that's a great method.
Triggers so many people, though. Whenever I talk to people about this, you'll be surprised how many people, I don't think I live in echo chambers, but you'll be surprised how many people try to really help me to stay the victim and to really villainize the other person. Like, if I ever try to be like, this happened in my life, but I am taking responsibility for it, you wouldn't believe how many people want me to be the victim. It's really, really interesting.
Well,
really interesting.
Because they want to stay the victim too. That says more about them than you.
Yeah. That's what I think too. You said in your book, happiness cannot be found in external rewards. And I really like that, because again, it aligns with a framework that I have, that you're either living the inside out life or you're living the outside in life. Whenever people are really struggling, it's because they're giving away their power to outside forces. Just talk about that a little bit, and maybe when you first came across this, because it's quite a profound statement, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think I know. It's a very old philosophical principle dating all the way back to the Yoga Sutras that attachments is one of the primary causes of suffering. And so when I'm in a state of fear, I'm usually scared of not getting something or scared of losing something that I already have, that I've formed an attachment with. And if I'm constantly, and I'm not just talking about like materialism and consumerism and having the next best car. I mean, we certainly fall into those traps, but I just mean, because I'm still dealing with a lot of codependency stuff. And if I'm emotionally depending on others, for example, for my happiness, that's a flimsy, precarious situation that my day is going to be determined by another human who's also flawed and suffers with the human condition. And so when I say that, whether it's relationships, work, any of those things you're looking to, it's usually an arrival fallacy. It's usually once I get that, then everything will settle down. Once I get that promotion, once I get my driver's license. We do this since we're young. We always are looking towards the next milestone. And then we get there and it's like, okay, what's the next thing? You know? Um, and we can get excited about life. There's things that I love and reach out to for happiness, but they're not the sole determinant of it. They can't be. And so when I say that, I say, I would rather spend my time, and it sounds like this is what you were doing with your wife in the incident. I would rather spend my time working on my inner self and improving that rather than trying to control all the people, places, and things around me to fit my schema in, being the center of the universe of this orbit that I'll never be able to control. It's just a waste of energy. So why not build my character and maybe deal with some discomfort from those outside things not looking like I want, or my relationship not looking like I want with them, and do the inner work so that next time it happens, it's like look within rather than trying to find something to make you feel better.
I mean, using the example of my fight with my wife and tying it into self-awareness and external, internal rewards. I am going home in 2 days. So yeah, I fly home tomorrow. So I'll see her in 2 days. I haven't seen her for a long time. We've been traveling around
Oh,
separately.
wow.
And I felt a real sadness when I was walking around just now because we are angry at each other. And I think before I had, before when I was alcohol reliant and I had minimal self awareness, I wouldn't be thinking of anything other than I'm angry at her.
Yeah.
Now with a little more self awareness, I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. I'm angry at her and I really want her
And
to be loving towards me, which
mhm.
is giving my power away and saying, as long as she is happy and not angry, I'm okay. No, I have to be okay and manage my nervous system, because if I'm going to have a loving, beautiful relationship with her for the rest of my life, she has to be angry with me. And when she's angry with me, I got to be a man and I got to be able to handle it so she knows she could be angry with me and I'm not going to act like a little baby, right? So it's like, so then
Mhm.
she trusts me and she feels safer to be even more angrier. So it's like, it's like,
That's funny.
but I think that little kind of like montage, it kind of like hits all the points that we were just talking about around
Yeah,
self-awareness, external, that kind of thing, you know?
definitely. Definitely. I just had a thought come to me, but I think I lost it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. So like you said, I want her to love me more, whatever that looks like. That's an expectation that that we made up in our head and are expecting that other person to meet, and they might not even have any idea what that looks like. And I've heard expectations or resentments waiting to happen, and that just really stuck with me because like, no, I think this person should be that way, and this is the right way in my world. So if they're not, they don't meet that standard, I'm gonna then be upset. And like I said, it's just flimsy. It's not, we can't do that no matter how good a relationship you have, how amazing your partner, how amazing your job is. We can't depend on those external factors. They're just nothing. The only constant is change.
Yeah, the word that comes up for me, and I'm going to say this with oodles of compassion, is lazy. So it feels really lazy for me to just want her to change, and it's a lot more work for me to change. And you
Mm-hmm.
talked about cognitive behavioral therapy earlier. I don't know if you know the work of David Burns. He's been on here a couple of times. He wrote the book Feeling Good, and I remember him doing some coaching with me, and I got a light bulb, and then me and Liza had another fight in Barcelona, and I called him up, and I was like, "None of this works, David," and he's like, "Lee,
David.
man, yeah," he's like, "Lee, the death of the ego is a lonely road." Do you know what I mean? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
you can go back to doing everything you've done, and you're just going to keep getting the same thing.
Yeah.
Looking inward at yourself is a very, very lonely road, right? And I was like, motherfucker, it is so tough, but
Mhm.
now it's
Yeah.
getting a little bit easier. You talked
Which
about
is ironic. Sorry to interrupt you, which is
that's
ironic
okay.
because the more I do look inward, the better relationships I'm able to have with
Yes,
people when I'm doing the
100%.
work. So,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Even though it's hard, even though it's difficult, even though it's challenging, it's a little bit
Yeah.
like quitting drinking, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
it's really difficult to quit drinking because it's all we know. We hold on to it because without it, we're at the cliff edge. We got no rope on. We don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Similarly, taking personal responsibility for the way that you conduct yourself in the world is the same thing. If you've never done it before, it's like letting go of your alcohol. It's really scary because, I mean, the thing that comes up for me more than anything, and I just touched upon it before, is if we and you have a big fight, Lindsay,
Mhm.
and I come back to you and take responsibility for my part in it, and you just turn around and say, thanks. There is a big part of me that's like, yeah, well, what about you, Lindsay?
I
Yeah,
know. I
and
know.
so that's the work. For me, the work is I don't need that. I don't need Lindsay to take
Exactly.
responsibility because Lindsay's a perfectly imperfect human being, and this is not
Mhm.
about her right now. This is about me taking responsibility, and it is hard, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean it doesn't have to, you don't have to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway,
Yeah,
shedding.
keeping your side of the street clean, kind of. Yeah.
Hmm. Shedding. You talked about shedding in your book. There's a chapter on
Yeah.
it. I loved it. Tell people what you mean about that.
Yes. It might be my favorite chapter in my book, or at least my favorite phase in my book. So, shedding, there's a chapter called Shed. And the way I think of it is getting rid of all, fall is a nice time to think about it. The leaves or the trees shedding their leaves. The example I use in my book is the metaphor of a snake shedding its skin. And I think before we can start like adding things to our life and enriching, or I mean, simultaneously, we're always like weaving in and out of different phases, but are letting go and unlearning a lot of messaging we got along the way that we don't actually agree with, but just have become embedded in our culture and have become automatic thoughts and normalized. Just drinking. Drinking is an example, right? Like if an alien came here from another planet and saw what we do, saw all of us drinking and then what all of the consequences, the domestic violence, the in leading us to insanity, driving drunk. They'd be like, why would they ever do that? I don't understand. Like they're just poisoning themselves every night. But we like for that to have become so normalized in our culture. So that's just an example. And I'm not even necessarily saying shedding drinking, but shedding, it could be thought processes like we were talking about, that self-doubt, that shame, roles, ideas, dynamics, literal things. I'm a big believer in how we keep our space as a reflection of our life. So, what are you keeping around you? What's in your energy? What are you looking at every day? So, shed just feels like this nice release of those things so that you can let come to the surface and bring in what is more authentically aligned with you deep down. So, we're not creating someone new, we're remembering who we are. And under all of those layers that have been caked on since birth.
That it really came out in your writing, is and then I said to you off camera that there's a lot of things when I was reading the book that felt aligned to the way that I think about life. And one of those was that you don't become something new. You're rediscovering who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't say this in the book. This is just my own belief. But whenever I think about higher power, for example, I don't think my higher power is outside of me. I think my higher power is within me. My higher
Mm-hmm.
power is myself, and self has been hidden underneath a pile of different personalities working in dysfunctional ways to keep me safe. It's almost like, did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, a little bit, but I wouldn't know like the full
It's like the
synopsis.
episode, The Battle of the Bastards, where Jon Snow is literally in this battle, but there's like hundreds of people on top of him. And all of a sudden, his hand comes out of all these people with his
I did
sword.
see that. I do
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me when I finally was like, oh wow, I don't have to I don't have to look outside of me to be what I call alcohol free as fuck. I know how to do that because I spent the first 14 years of my life in that space, in that state. I just need to remember or unlearn what happened from 14 to 35 and then move forward. So I really like that. I guess another thing you wrote in your book about and focused on was willingness.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so, so, as I'm thinking there is, oh yeah, I can realize that drinking has some bad sides to it, but I also think it has some good sides to it. So, so where's my willingness to change? So how did willingness become an integral part of your transformation?
Yeah, I love the word willingness because it just feels so gentle and it's still giving us a choice. Um, and there's different layers to it. And I had to really I think willingness is the first step in, well, no, noticing is the first step, like noticing what the problem is. Like you said, I'm drinking, there's good things, there's bad things, just kind of taking stock of your situation. And then willingness to change, like I said, is willing to be more intentional about those daily experiences or experiments that you're having and like shifting the dial this way, shifting the dial. So I know that I had to be willing and open minded and really make a point to do that because I thought I knew everything. It's this weird complex. I thought I was the worst person in the world, but I also thought I was better than everyone else. So and that no one could teach me anything and I knew everything. So it was just chaos, chaos. But I had to come clean to myself and be like, something's not working for me. I'm out of ideas. Maybe someone else could suggest something to me, and that took a lot of work because that takes a lot of humility. And but I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I just couldn't. So I would tell people if you're feeling stuck in any area of your life, like what's the harm in just being willing to listen to a new perspective or try a new perspective? And that's how I had to start. I mean, there's a lot of different ways people coach and people talk to themselves. And for me, it had to be a very gentle unfolding of all of these things. And that's just my personality. That's how I guide others. And it depends on who you are. But I had to really, I was very scrutinous in the steps I was making and why am I doing this? And I had a lot of doubt about other people's ideas. And I really had to had to put my pride away in order to take those suggestions. So yeah, that's my experience with willingness.
I that speaks to me a lot. I was giving some feedback on a course yesterday actually, and I realized in that moment that I always think really derogatory of course. Like, I said to you about books. I'm the same with
Yeah.
courses. I'll take a course and I'll be like, this is pants, and it comes from almost like a narcissistic
Uh-huh.
side of my personality that thinks if I accept that it's good, then what does that mean about mine? But if I say that it's bad, then mine must be better. And so I think for me, there's a safety in my own kind of
Yeah.
narcissism, like, so yeah, I definitely had, and it kind of a defense mechanism around being bullied as well in school. It's like I cannot allow myself to be lower than anybody else. I have to be higher
Mhm.
than anybody else because then it will give me the power to fight back, type of thing. Um,
Yeah.
you talked
Yeah.
about, sorry,
So like acknowledging someone else's gift or like how they're excelling or if their course is beneficial, you see that in direct proportion to what you created,
yeah,
which makes sense because of this polarity that you
yes.
have, right?
Well, it could be the same in an argument with my wife, right? So like,
Yeah.
I probably the person that I argue with most in the world is the person I love the most in the world, which is my wife. And of course, there's a part of me that every time there's a part of me that has a very kind of derogatory view of her, a very judgmental view that she's this, and this. And you may ask yourself, well, why do you think that about someone you love? And it's well, because it keeps me
Yeah.
safe, right? Like if she's down there somewhere
Mhm.
on every
Mhm.
checklist, then I'm up here, so it keeps me safe. But if suddenly I elevate
Mhm.
her into this great parenting is a great one. Like if she is like the world's greatest parent, what does that make me? So that was
Yeah.
like a huge piece of work for me to be able to be like, I gotta bow down to this woman because there are certain aspects of parenting that she just fucking nails, and she's like the greatest, and she's my inspiration, and I can learn from her. And so, like
Mhm.
that willingness, it does, like you saying in the book, it prevents you from growth, it prevents you from development and learning. So humility
Mhm.
for sure. And the other part of that was surrendering. You talk
Mhm.
about surrendering in your book. And as a young man growing up, surrendering was waving the white flag. Like you never do that. Like that's
No.
weakness. That's not how you see things, right?
No, but I totally understand why that word conjures uh, such images because, especially in America, like we just see things as this dog eat dog world. I'm going to take care of myself. And I'm making a blanket statement. Not everyone thinks that way, but it's just embedded in our culture and our model of society. And so I think there's great power in surrender, and I actually see it as a strength. And it's a more just a more advanced form, I think, of willingness. Or maybe it's the same as willingness. Maybe it doesn't have to be this huge, I surrender. Like by saying, maybe I can learn, maybe this person can tell me one sentence today that helps me because maybe I don't know everything. That to me, in and of itself, is some kind of surrender because I'm saying, I'm acknowledging that I don't know everything. I'm surrendering to the fact that I can accept from somebody else, that I can be willing. So the reason I say it gives us strength is because not everyone can do that. And I think the stronger person is the person that says, it is the person who uses their resources and says, I'm out of ideas. Can you help me? Rather than the person that's like sitting there white knuckling it. I'm not going to ask for help because I'm so tough and I'm so strong. Like that to me, I mean, based on what I value and the type of people I'm around and what I see as strength and weakness, yeah, I think strength is like I said, utilizing all of the resources we have. And that means getting out of my own head and not thinking I'm the center of the universe and that I know everything. Thank God. Thank God we all know different things. Thank God some people parent in different ways that we can learn from, right? Like, and that goes, surrendering goes back to this way of like not idolizing the ego so much and being like, wait, I'm just a contributor to this life. It's not all about me. And so that's kind of like the first step of hold on, let me see how I can participate rather than how I can reign and be better than everybody else.
Yeah, you said in the book, I want you to take life less seriously and let it be a little easier, more fun. That's what surrender feels like to me. There are times
Yeah.
when I'm taking life too seriously and I really just need to fucking let go and just go for a
Yes.
walk in the sunshine or lie on the bed and do nothing. And for me, that's surrendering. This, like, I have to surrender this need to do, and to
Yes.
just be for a moment. So that's what came up for me when you were talking about surrendering. I think it's really powerful. Um, what is a spiritual vigilante?
Yeah. So I title, and I have the copy of the book right here. I don't usually have my book with me, but I've made a point. So the book is called Spirit Vigilante. And the reason I came up with that name is I think in a lot of this work, and I don't know if you can relate to this, Lee, or not, but thinking positive and sunshines and light and rainbows and all of that is great. I also kind of have a dark side, and I think a lot of us do, and I had to go through a lot of dark to get to the light. And I like words, I love words, so I like the juxtaposition of spirit and vigilante. Like how can those even be on the same plane? And so when I think of vigilante, I think of, you know, superheroes are vigilantes. They're usually doing something. They're not okay with the way things are, and they're taking it upon themselves to save people, save themselves, perform some heroic act, and forget fantasy. But most of the most influential people in the world where things got done, they say well-behaved women don't rarely make history is kind of an example. Rosa Parks, all of these people who stood up and said, actually, no, I don't think that's okay. I'm not just going to go along with that. So that's what I see as a vigilante. And then also this constant self-awareness is, obviously the word vigilante is the word vigilant. So staying awake and staying watchful and staying smart, and not in a way like, oh my God, who's coming for me next? It's more of just keeping that awareness and humility and openness and willingness every day to protect your soul and defend your soul so that you can operate in the world. So it's not this idea of like villain or F everyone, I'm going to be a vigilante. It's so much more than that. And so when I say vigilante, it's more just encouraging people to be their own vigilante in their inner world and their orbit as
Well,
well.
I really enjoyed reading it. I haven't finished it actually. I've still got a few chapters left to go. Apologies for calling it spiritual vigilante,
That's
spirit
okay. That's
vigilante,
okay. That's okay.
spirit
Yeah.
vigilante for people out there. What are you doing these days? So people listening to this who are turned on and want to know a little bit more about you and the work you're doing. Are you doing any coaching? Is it just a book for the moment? What's going on in your world?
Well, right now I look like a spirit vigilante because I'm like half in the
I can
sun
see
and
it.
half in the dark. And I don't usually do podcasts at this time of day. So I'm going to shift that just because that's going to be distract. But then the sun's in my face. So here we go. Let me just do this. Okay. Zoom in a little bit.
I
Um,
see this quite a lot. You can see the sun slowly as the hour goes
yeah,
on.
yeah. It's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
It's kind of beautiful with everything. It's appropriate for everything we're talking about. I planned that. So yeah, I'm running a wellness studio and we just had an open house this past weekend, and it's a place, it's called Haven 101 Wellness Studio, and it's a place for any practitioner healer to come and share their gifts. So everything from yoga to acupuncture to sound healing, um, all these different modalities. I just got a massage right before this. So that's been one of my primary ventures. I'm working on my next book. I teach a lot of creative workshops. And what I mean by that is writing, but not so much the mechanics of writing, but like the spiritual aspect of it and how much that affects our voice and really, like we said, letting go and letting either, whether it's your concept, by the way, of higher power is beautiful, of that force within you, because why wouldn't you have that? You came from something larger that has the power to create. So why wouldn't you be a creator yourself? Right. So I really, really think that's a beautiful concept. But all about that, like trusting yourself, trusting your voice, expressing yourself. So I do that. I teach yoga. I have a few different things going on, but it's fun. And I do some coaching too. A lot of book coaching for people writing books and helping them through the process. So,
Well, thank you for writing it and putting it out there. Those stories that people read, because people give up hope. They think that it's
mhm,
really difficult. And so to pick up a piece of literature and read it and be like, oh, this person, I think you said like go battling in the trenches with somebody who feels your pain or something.
mhm,
So like they'll be like, oh, I get this person.
mhm.
Especially the bipolar community out there, which I know
Yeah.
is within my community. They'll be able to kind of get a lot out of that. So thank you very much for writing it, because I know it wasn't easy and you had to go places that you wasn't maybe ready to go yet. So I really do appreciate it,
Mhm.
and keep up the great work. Yeah.
And thank you so much for reading it. And I can tell you really read it and could highlight things and that you understood it. And so that just means so much to me that you could interpret it in a way that works for you. And thank you so much for just sharing the word in this way and healing and helping people.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye.